Hi, welcome to Horror Movie Explanation. Today I'm going to explain a thriller horror movie named 9 Dead. So let's begin. In Los Angeles, a mysterious man prepares for a series of abductions. He sets up a prison and arms himself with non-lethal weapons, then sets out wearing a mask. The assailant's first victim is Sully Fenton, a mean man and the owner of a strip club. He's also a loan shark, one of those who lend people money for huge profits. Sully scolds one of his dancers very harshly for sitting down on duty and leaves the building, where he gets immobilized by the assailant and abducted. The next evening, a detective police officer named Dean Jackson, walking out of a building with his colleague, is abducted the same way, with his colleague sprayed in the eyes. Next, a man whose name is Coogan, having heard the news, becomes suspicious. He realizes the assailant is after him and tries to attack him with a knife but is outsmarted. Christian Collins, a Hollywood actor, is also nabbed during a night out with his friends. A priest called Father Francis, a gangster, Leon, a Chinese store owner, Nung Chan, a health insurance agency worker, Eddie Vigoda, and an assistant district attorney known as Kelly Murphy, are also abducted. They are all locked up in a cell and handcuffed to individual poles, with their heads covered by sacks and their mouths sealed. The masked assailant enters the cell soon to set the prisoners loose and speaks. Then he explains that there is a reason he has brought them together, which he wants them to uncover in order to survive. After every 10 minutes, if they are unable to find out why they are there, he says one person will be eliminated. He promises to let go of the survivors once they crack open the riddle, and turn himself into the police. Then he starts the clock and leaves the cell. The prisoners are stunned at first, not knowing what to do. Leon thinks the assailant is just a cop pulling some stunt. Coogan backs him up with some history to prove it. But Jackson is sure it can't be. Eddie, too, has a point. He knows there can't be any greater evil for anybody to seek revenge, so somebody must have done something inappropriate to a minor. So, he asks them if they remember anything. Coogan admits to this, however, he doesn't tell them if it was a boy or a girl because he says, it doesn't matter to him. After that, Eddie plans to start putting these things into writing, first introducing himself to the rest, and he picks up chalk to jot on the wall. Next, he asks Kelly if she has committed any crime, but she denies ever wrongfully convicting anyone so bad that they would come back for revenge. Christian identifies Sully all of a sudden. He says Sully loaned him some money by giving him drugs which he accidentally sold to undercover cops, resulting in him going to prison for 3 years. When Sully asks if he paid back, Christian adds that he knows what happens to anyone who doesn't pay Sully back his money. Even though he didn't have anything before and after his imprisonment, he says he paid him back as soon as he got out of jail. Once Jackson hears that Sully isn't from Los Angeles, he asks if there is anyone else who isn't from Los Angeles. Coogan says he has been to more than one prison in different parts of the country. Father Francis says he has a Catholic parish in San Fernando Valley. And Eddie is from Barstow. Leon refuses to talk, saying he doesn't care what the assailant wants. Just then, they notice the Chinese woman and realize that she doesn't seem to know English. They are left with 2 minutes after a while, and they all become anxious to know what exactly would happen once the clock stops ticking. The countdown stops and the assailant enters the cell, asking them if they have found the answer to his riddle. And, since they don't seem to know, he pulls the trigger of his pistol at Christian and takes him down, threatening to come back after another 10 minutes. But, before he leaves, he tells them they would also need to know why Christian himself was in the cell. Now, there are 8 of them left. Coogan later jabbers that he served time for 5 years. Jackson asks him why he went to prison, but he doesn't tell the truth. Kelly soon begs Leon to talk, so he agrees and says he and his brother were thieves, but he denies having ever eliminated or inappropriately touching anyone. Jackson sees this as a loop and asks if Kelly ever prosecuted Leon, but it doesn't seem like Leon was ever caught. Father Francis can hardly take any more of their confessions since he's a reverend. But Eddie doesn't believe he's clean for being in the same cell as the rest of them. They ask Eddie too to make some confessions, and he says he once falsified forms to get medical treatment for his brother-in-law who had colon cancer. Next, Kelly confesses to sleeping with Jackson in the past, and maybe it could be Jackson's ex-wife getting back at them. The rest of the prisoners see this as flimsy since none of them know each other for that. Leon speaks on an idea. He discovers a way to get his hand out of the handcuffs, so he asks Sully, who is closest to him, to break his hand so he can slide out of the handcuffs. Sully does, and he gently pulls his hand from the cuff and makes a run for it, ignoring the others as they call for help with their cuffs. The assailant, who has been watching them the whole time, goes after Leon. He finds him and they get into a fight. Leon grabs his gun from his hand and points it at him. But the assailant has everything all planned out. He tells Leon he has planned this assault for 2 years and can't afford to lose. The firearm in Leon's hand is quite empty because the assailant would only load a single bullet before he enters the cell. Leon flees at once but catches 2 bullets from the assailant with another pistol. He then drags him back into the cell and hooks him up to his pole. 10 minutes later, the assailant asks again for the answer to his riddle. Since they can't yet provide one, he goes over to Coogan. Coogan says he doesn't want his blood to splatter on anyone if he dies, so Coogan grabs the assailant's neck to strangle him but gets a bullet in his heart and is dragged off by the assailant, who threatens to come next for Leon. The clock starts ticking again and this time they are scared to death. They have 8 minutes to figure out why Leon also awaits a death sentence. It's just then that Mrs. Chan recognizes Kelly as her attorney when she was robbed by a guy called Wade Greeley. As a result, Eddie already has a timeline that he wants them to individually fill out to solve the riddle. Leon, who didn't intend to talk, now confesses. He says he lied about not killing anyone in his life because he did take his brother's life for cheating him, and later sold the guns they had left. He also tells the rest what the assailant told him about him planning the assault for 2 years. So, they all try to think 2 years back about what they might have done wrong, but the countdown finishes at the same time. The assailant enters and finishes Leon off. As soon as the new countdown begins, Father Francis says he already knows why he and someone else are there but can't disclose it since it was said to him in his confessional. Seeing that Father Francis' mind is made up, Eddie continues with his analysis and finds out that the assailant might not be thinking of direct involvement in this predicament. He might be seeking revenge on even people who have mildly contributed to his misery. So, he wants every one of them to come clean about all they have ever done. Sully says he once eliminated a man for slapping him. Jackson also admits to beating a speeding driver resulting in blindness. Eddie, too, doesn't deny having forcefully slept with a girl while he was drunk. But, when it's Father Francis's turn, Kelly tries to prevent him from speaking. He reluctantly confesses that he knows that Wade Greeley didn't rob Mrs. Chan's store. Kelly tries to dismiss this by saying that she had the evidence against him at that time. Eddie deduces from earlier when Christian was still alive and finds out that it has to be him who robbed the liquor store and went to Father Francis's confessional. Father Francis backs this up, and it all starts to make sense. After Christian got out of jail, he was under pressure to cover his debt to Sully, which was why he robbed the liquor store. So maybe Wade is now seeking revenge for his wrongful conviction. The countdown stops and the assailant enters again. This time he points the gun at Eddie but Father Francis takes the bullet for him. While he drags off the Reverend's body, Kelly tries to plead with him, calling him Wade. The assailant gets a little pissed and tells her he's not Wade. Knowing now that all there is left is something starting from Wade's conviction. Eddie and Jackson try to ask Kelly if she knows anything but she fires back at them, saying she doesn't remember anything since it was long ago. Soon, Sully comes up with a conclusion that since Leon said he sold the guns around the time Christian got out of prison, it has to be that Christian robbed the store with the gun he bought from Leon. So, Eddie extends his timeline and discovers that Sully gave Christian the motive for the robbery, Leon gave him an opportunity, Mrs. Chan identified the wrong man, Kelly locked him up, and Father Francis refused to tell the cops. And that's why they are all in the cell, except for Coogan, Eddie, and Jackson. The countdown finishes just then and the assailant enters to take Mrs. Chan's life this time. Kelly then becomes frightened and starts seeking pity for her child. The assailant gets angry for using her child as an excuse and yells at her. Then Kelly later confesses that the child is Jackson's. She also confesses that she made up the evidence against Wade Greeley after Mrs. Chan accidentally picked him out and that she used Jackson to back it up. Eddie thinks through how upset the assailant got when Kelly tried to use her son for pity. And Coogan, who spent 5 years in jail, could have been the only one who had contact with Wade Greeley in prison. But, before Eddie gets through with his analysis, the countdown runs out and the assailant enters. Then, he goes to Sully since he has sworn not to change the way he does business and shoots him down. Soon, while the other two are too tired to continue, Kelly confesses to eliminating a man because he forcefully slept with her. In addition, she cleared all leads to the killer and swept all evidence of the murder under the carpet. After tough thinking, Eddie comes up with the last piece of the riddle. Since Coogan touched minors inappropriately, he could have been in contact with Wade Greeley in prison. What if he had AIDS which he transferred to Wade Greeley, and that was why he didn't want his blood splattering on anyone? Eddie knows this could be true because his company had access to a drug therapy that could prolong the lives of AIDS patients around the time Wade Greeley left prison. So, Eddie happens to be in the cell for turning down Wade Greeley due to his criminal record. He knows it has to be his father who is seeking revenge. And, the 2 years he used in planning the assault was exactly how long his son lived. When the countdown ends and the assailant enters, they give him this answer and he pulls his mask off. Then, he deliberately gives Kelly the key and asks her to unlock herself and the 2 others, telling them he has informed the police of their location. Instead, Kelly unlocks herself and attacks the assailant. She grabs his loaded gun and eliminates everyone after letting them know she can't let anyone leave with her confession. Then she flees the building as the police arrive.